I never believed in superstitions. Growing up in Legos, my world was all about party, shopping, and noisy city streets. So when I visited my grandfather in his quiet village deep in southeastern Nigeria, I was prepared for a boring week of early bedtimes and awkward silences. I had no idea that one night there would change my life forever. Grandpa's house was old, with mud walls and a thatched roof that seemed ready to collapse at any moment. It stood at the edge of Nyanga Forest, a sprawling expanse of thick, ancient trees that seemed alive in their own eerie way. The villagers treated the forest with an almost holy reverence. They rarely ventured far into it, and when they did, they carried charms and spoke in hushed voices. The first night, Grandpa shared stories under the moonlight as we sat by a small fire. His voice was deep and commanding, perfect for storytelling. He told me about Nyanga Forest and the spirits that roamed it, the Akum. They are neither good nor evil, he said, staring into the flames, but they are powerful, and they do not tolerate disrespect. Disrespect? Like what? I asked, leaning forward. Like whistling at night, he replied, his tone darkening. When you whistle, the Akum think you're calling them. If they come and don't like what they find, you may not live to regret it. I rolled my eyes. Come on, Grandpa. That's just a scary story to keep kids in line. Grandpa's gaze sharpened. You may not believe, Emeka, but the Akum don't care whether you believe or not. They are always listening. The fire crackled, and for a moment the silence between us felt heavy. But I brushed it off. It was just an old man's tale. Or so I thought. The next evening, I met Chidi, a boy around my age who lived in the village. He was loud and full of mischief, and we hit it off immediately. He was the one who suggested we explore the edge of Nyanga Forest after dark. It's just a bunch of trees, Chidi said with a grin. People here act like it's some magical kingdom or something. I hesitated. Grandpa's warning replayed in my head, but I didn't want to look like a coward. So I followed him, the thrill of breaking rules egging me on. The forest felt different at night. The air was colder, and the shadows seemed alive. We walked until we were just at the boundary, where the trees grew thickest. Let's do something fun, Chidi said suddenly. What do you mean? Whistle. Let's see if the Akum come for us. I froze. No way, man. My grandpa said. Your grandpa's scared of his own shadow, Chidi interrupted, laughing. Come on, Emeka. Just one whistle. What's the worst that can happen? I wanted to argue, but my pride wouldn't let me back down. I pursed my lips and let out a single, sharp whistle. The sound echoed through the trees, almost mocking us. For a moment, nothing happened. I exhaled, relieved. Then the wind shifted. It wasn't a normal breeze. It was cold and unnatural, carrying with it a faint, high-pitched whistle that mimicked mine exactly. Did you hear that? I whispered, my voice trembling. Chidi's grin faded. Yeah, but maybe it's just the wind. We turned to leave, but the whistling followed us, growing louder. It seemed to come from all around us, and the air grew heavy, making it hard to breathe. Suddenly, Chidi grabbed my arm. Run, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. We bolted through the darkness, branches tearing at our clothes and faces. The forest seemed to close in on us, the whistling turning into an eerie chorus that filled my ears and my chest with dread. No matter how fast we ran, the sound was always right behind us. When we finally reached the edge of the forest and stumbled into the village, we thought we were safe. But the whistling didn't stop. It was faint now, but still there, circling us like a predator. Chidi was pale, his bravado completely gone. What do we do? He stammered. We go to my grandpa, I said, pulling him toward the house. Grandpa was waiting by the door, as if he'd known something was wrong. You whistled, didn't you? He asked, his voice like a thunderclap. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I'm sorry, Grandpa. I didn't think. There's no time for that, he snapped. He grabbed a small wooden box from the shelf and began muttering in Igbo, words I didn't understand, but that sent chills down my spine. He opened the box to reveal a mixture of ash, herbs, and something that looked like ground bone. He threw it into the fire and the flames roared, turning an unnatural green. "Stay inside," he ordered, stepping out into the yard. He began to chant, sprinkling the mixture around the perimeter of the house. The whistling grew louder, angrier, until it was almost deafening. Chidi and I huddled together, too scared to speak. The walls seemed to shake, and for a moment, I thought the Akum would tear the house apart. Then just as suddenly as it began, the whistling stopped. The air felt lighter, and the forest was silent again. Grandpa came back inside, his face grim. "The Akum have accepted my apology. You're lucky they didn't take you." That night, Grandpa told me more about the Akum. They were guardians of the forest, spirits older than anyone could remember. They weren't evil, but they had their own rules, and anyone who broke them paid the price. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and relief. "The forest doesn't belong to us, Emeka. It belongs to them. Never forget that." I haven't whistled at night since, and I haven't forgotten the sound of that whistle following me, a haunting reminder that some stories aren't just stories, they're warnings. Moral lesson: respect the traditions and beliefs of others, especially when they involve forces beyond your understanding. Arrogance and ignorance can lead to consequences you might not be able to escape.